Hey guys, welcome back out in the garage. Gonna do a video today, a couple of things. I had a couple of people reach out. Well, one of them was a comment on one of my last YouTube videos about trying to use this landscape instead of whatever the other vertical style is. I tried landscape before on the old YouTube a couple times, but ended up wasting that video because it kept flipping upside down whenever I pointed at something. It would rotate it, and it was bugging me. So I'm gonna try it again. Like I said, that was over a year ago, so we'll see what happens. So I'm gonna try this in landscaping and see if that comes out better this time or not. Also, I had my friend Michael, he wanted to know if I can show a few things. Actually, how I would Plastigage if I Plastigage an engine, and how I put my two-piece rear main seal in, and how I check the thrust or the in-play or in-float, whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to show those three items, or those three things I should say, and I'm going to try the camera like this, and hopefully it works out. Okay, I'm not used to it, but we'll see what happens. So I'm going to start with the rear main seal, only because I still got to lay the crank in and Plastigage it. All right, so I'm just going to do the rear main seal first. Two-piece rear main seal are like this. Okay, it's just like that. Well, you know what I'm saying. All right. Everybody has their own way of doing it. Okay, I don't think there is a right or a wrong. As if it doesn't leak, then you did all right. Okay, and if you have a way of doing it and it's always worked for you, I wouldn't change it. So what I'm showing is just the way I do it. I'm not saying this is the way you got to do it. So on these two-piece rear main seals, there's a little lip, of course, right here, and some of these rear main seals depend on the brand. Okay, I use Felpro. I probably use 90-something% Felpro. Okay, and even Felpro comes in a lot of the gasket sets. So when you buy a gasket kit to do your build. So anyway, but there are some that are, the lip might be firm or the lip might be soft, you know. So people have preference on that also. What I like about these is it's got a firm lip on it, and that's what I like. I don't like it to be too soft, and my reasonings are, you have a crank, you know, you just had it turned or whatever, but it's got a lot of, you know, it's been around for a long time, and you may have a little bit of a groove in the back. You didn't use a seal saver. That's the soft one. It can actually, I think, mess with it a little bit because, you know, you have infloat too. You got your cranks going back and forth. I always felt that the one that's more firm will have better control in that area. Okay, that's just me. Also, another reason why I like the firm is because you have crankcase pressures. Okay, if you have a vacuum pump or any kind of vacuum device or whatever hooked to it to pull out, and let's say you're pulling a little more vacuum than what's normal, because some guys, you know, they run a pump, they kind of crank it up a little bit. I think the firm seal doesn't affect it as much. Okay, because you got to remember, if the lip goes to the oil side, now if your vacuum is here, it may try to pull that lip up a little bit. Okay, it may mess with that lip, and then you have the outside air on this side, which I call it dirty air, and it goes the same for the front seal. So if you I always felt if you're running a vacuum pump, you need to buy a seal for the rear and the front, you know, both sides, that's almost like a double lip. Okay, I'm sure they have them. I don't run any kind of vacuum pumps. But I know guys that do, and they're putting regular seals in. Okay, but I'm sure they have to make them because you kind of want a double lip, because one side needs to control dust or dirty air. Okay, So anyway, that's why I like the firm ones, okay? The soft ones I think can roll right up. Now, as we're talking about the lip itself, let's go ahead and talk about installing it. So I install, the lip to the oil side. This will be your oil side in towards the middle, okay? So we put it in. I put mine, if I can get it in there, there it goes. Just like that. I don't do the rotation, okay? A lot of guys do the rotation, in Ford, Chevy, whatever, Dodge, Pontiac. It doesn't matter. A lot of guys do rotation, and a lot of guys still stay flat, okay? So whatever works for you, continue doing it that way. But I like to put them in flat, just like that. And you'll notice, even when you put them in flat, they're still raised up. 20 thousandths it looks like here. Well, it feels like, or whatever. I shouldn't say it looks. You can't really see it, I guess. And it holds true for the cap as well. It sticks out a little bit, especially if your cap. Okay, let's go ahead and put this one in. Okay, lip to the oil side. So I can still feel it. Okay, I can feel both sides perfect, and I can feel this. So you're gonna get crushed. Okay. Plus, if you ever align home your block, they're taking a couple of thousandths, off the cap, So it's even giving you just a little bit more, but you don't want too much crush, of course. But you gotta remember the lip is actually, when it's together, is a smaller diameter than the crank seal area is. That way it always has a little bit of pressure on there. Now, going back to that part, before I go on about the silicone part of it, the lip, okay, if you look at your seal, if you look at it in the block or in the cap, like if I hold it like this, I don't know if I can make the right angle, you really don't see the seal. You see the lip, but it's in here. But you don't see that other big body part of it, okay? Because the lip is the only thing that's actually going around the crankshaft, okay? And if you once you get your engine assembled, you're gonna see there's about a 20 thousandths plus or minus, gap all the way around. So your crank isn't touching the block, of course. It's just touching the seal. And that's because it only touches the lip. So your oil leak basically is the split where the lip of that seal is, okay? It's because that lip, now let's just say, again, this is all my doing, okay? You have the lips and they're together here like this now, but as the crank turns, let's just say, and if it starts to move one because of the groove, then you got inflow or anything, and that's where your leaks are always at. So what I actually do is just leave it alone. I leave it like that. These blocks come originally with rope seals, okay? And I better bring that up since I'm talking this. If you had a rope seal still in that and you went and you're switching over to this rubber seal, there is a little spike or a nail that's in here. Okay, you need to remove that. It knocks right out. You just need to remove that, or it'll play heck with your new seal. So I just put a little dab of silicone or whatever I'm using, like silly seal or whatever you're using, just right there on top of that seal, right there on top of that seal. Okay, then about no more than a ½ inch up on this, right here on the side. Let's say. We'll just say, right in here, okay? Which is in that corner right there. I put this a little tiny bit there, and then the length of this here, okay? Right here. But not very much, okay? This is just not even more than 100 thousandths, okay, wide. And then about maybe a ½ inch, no more than a ½ inch back, okay? On both sides. Because your seal is taking care of the crankshaft. you have an oil slinger back there, unless it's a late model. A lot of them don't have that, you know, the one-piece seal stuff. But you can still get oil through here if you have any kind of flaws or anything. So this little silicone here is what's gonna stop you. But like, again, you don't need to put big beads or nothing. You don't want to squish it all over the place. You just put a nice little film, okay? Then once it's torqued, then the oil, if it tries, because of the splash and the crankcase pressures and all that, if it tries to get up in here, it's not gonna pass here, okay? So, and this has always worked great for me, and I don't have leaks, you know, but a lot of people don't have leaks. I read about it all the time. People say they stay with two-piece seal because they don't have leaks. There's no problem. But, so, that's why I don't overlap them or rotate them, because you still got the lips together. Any way you look at it, you're still gonna have the lips, not the body of the rubber part there, but just the lips. So that anywhere you rotate it, you're still gonna have those two lips, okay? So in other words, when this is together, let's say this is all together like that, and you had some kind of, well, let me put it this way. Let's say you had it together, and if you had a little thin needle like something, and you just kind of went in there, and you'll probably catch that lip, all right? And that lip can fold very easy. And that's why when you put your silicone on here, or whatever you're using, you're kind of covering that lip too, hoping those lips will stick together. So now a lot of guys would go with one-piece seals on blocks like this and other blocks, but they have to machine. Okay, and I've done lots of them. I showed them before. You just machine the block, then you can knock in a one-piece seal because there is no lips whatsoever on it. Oh, it sounds like someone drove up. Hold on. Nope. Okay. So there's no lip, so there's nothing for it to fold. Okay. There are a couple of companies now selling this seal as a one piece, so that you don't have to machine the caps, which is very cool. Except the only downfall with that, to put it on, you have to at least make one cut. Okay, not two cuts, just one. So basically you still have a lip area, even though you can put silicone there, but you still have that lip area. No matter where you put it, it's still gonna be there and it can still move a little bit, okay? So overall, a one-piece seal is basically superior, I guess you'd say, over a two-piece. But a lot of us don't have no issues with two-piece seals. Plus, most cranks have little lines in the back, you know, and they kind of control that also. They're kind of trying to throw the oil back in. That does get past the seal a little bit. You know, it's kind of a cool deal. That's why when you get these aftermarket cranks, you know, people, you know, you might get you a Scat or an Eagle or whatever, and they're really smooth. Okay, some of these two-piece seals don't like that real smooth crank. That's why most of them are designed for the one piece. Okay, so when you put a one piece on a stock crank, you can actually have a little bit of trouble because it has those lines now, and some of the one piece seals don't like those lines. So it's kind of a catch-22, or however they say that. So that's my deal there on the two-piece rear main seal. So you can look at it any way you want, but I'll always continue doing it this way because it works. All right. And again, don't flood this with silly seal. Just a little bead here, and just at that party line right there, and across. Then after it cures, you know, you can get a razor blade and just cut back here if you want to. You know, cut right there and it looks clean, or you can leave it hanging out, you know, whatever you want to do. But it's not going to go on the oil side. It's not going to get there because you're not putting that much on. You're not trying to fill that whole cavity. So that's the deal on the rear main seal. So now let's move to Plastigage, okay? This, as you can see, this motor is not ready to put together. This is one of the ones I just tore down. It's still, actually that's why I'm holding this rag, because it's grimy. And used bearings and everything, the used crank. But I'm gonna go ahead and lay the crank in there, but I'm only gonna plastic gauge the front one. There's no reason to do all 5, because you're gonna do them all the same anyway. So I'm just gonna do the front one just to kind of show. I basically do it like anybody else, I'm sure, but I just want to show how I do it. And then, but what I do is I leave the seal in. Okay, every time, whenever I plastic gauge or doing anything like that, checking stuff, even if it's in play, I always have the rear main seal in. Okay, I know a lot of guys don't put it in because they know they're gonna pull the crank back out and everything. They're just mocking, okay, mocking up the engine or whatever. Well, I like to always do everything with that seal in there, since that seal is gonna be part of the system when it's running. So let me turn this thing around. Let me see. Let me turn this around. See if I can get it in the camera. You know what? I'm gonna move this out of the way for a moment. And this. All right. Okay. Now, so I'm going to go ahead and lay the crank in, and we're going to do the plastic gauge, okay? And I'm just going to do the front one, like I say. So, my rear main seal's in, my bearings are in, and if this was a mock-up and you already cleaned a lot of it, of course this will already be clean. You gotta make sure the bearings are clean, and I don't use any oil, okay, when I'm plastic gauging. Let me go ahead and get the crank over here. All right, so I go ahead and lay the crank in. And as you can see, it's a dirty crank. Now when you plastic gauge, what I do is I try to turn it, you could, unless you just want to do one at a time, but if you're going to do all 5 at one time, you just got to make sure there's no oil hole, okay? You just got to make sure there's no oil hole, or the radius of the oil hole is where you're going to be putting the plastic gauge at. So you kind of can turn it anywhere you want. But anyway, so you just, however you want to do it, like that, just as long as it doesn't have no hole, or, you know, the oil galley hole. So there's that. Now plastic gauge. Yeah, my nose is itching. Okay, I'm sure a lot of people have seen this maybe in the Autoport store, or has some. That's your plastic gauge. It comes in green, it comes in red. Red is for like 2,000 to 6,000, and the green is from 1,000 to 3,000 clearance. Okay, and basically it's like an envelope. I mean, it's like an envelope you can open. And inside it has this little green, there it is, you can kind of see it. It's a piece of plastic, okay? Basically that's why they call it plastic gauge. Okay, so what I do is, you only need about an inch, no more than an inch, probably less than an inch. So I leave it in the, you know, in the beginning, I remember times doing this, and I would open this, and I'd break it off and stuff. I just go ahead and cut. Oh, and then you gotta make sure when you cut that you're gonna have all your deals, or you'd be putting this big part in, which is fine also. One side is thousandths, the other side is metric, okay? So, I wanna make sure don't cut away, okay. So basically, I'm just gonna Cut about that much. I don't, that's plenty, okay? And remember, you're gonna be doing this 5 times, but I'm just gonna do it once. No oil. I don't use no oil. I know some guys have, some guys do, and even assembly lube. I don't like to use any oil because what we're trying to do is figure out our oil clearance. So if we have stuff already filling the clearance, the gap, then this really is not giving you all the true stuff you're wanting. So it's best is you leave it dry. Just leave it dry. Now you just open up your little package and hope you don't drop it. I'm gonna take my glasses down. See if I can peel it off of there. And I did. But my hands are a little bit grimy because this motor's still dirty and it'll probably stick to my finger. Well, it didn't. Okay, I just laid it in there like that. So, let me see. This is the part I don't like about this. What do you call it? Landscape or whatever. So, right there is the Plastigage. I don't know where I'm at. Okay, now you go ahead and you lay your caps on. So let's say we laid it, we put them all on already. Not the caps, I meant we put all the green strips on already. Now you put your caps on, you try not to bounce them, try to put them on, sometimes that doesn't always happen, but as soft as you can, because you really don't want to hit that or mess with that Plastigage if you can help it. So go ahead and put these in. Okay. Rear main seal's already in. The back one's in. Okay, thrust bearing in. Number 2 in. Number 4 said no. Number 4 said turn me around. I want to be like the other guys. All right. Now see, if I knew how to edit, I would edit that out and turn it around before you guys knew, but I don't do any of that. Don't know how. So what happens here in the garage happens here in the garage. So, okay, now go ahead and run them down. I never use a hammer and do this job. If I do use a hammer, when I get them down farther, I hit the sides. I never hit the bearing, is always in the center. So you don't want to hit here because you could bounce the bearing, which will could give you a false reading on your Plastigage. Or if you're doing an assembly, guys do, they're ready to assemble. You can actually put a flat spot on your bearing if you're not careful. So never hit the cap in the center. I see some guys pound them. I'm like, really? I just go like this and I just go back and forth, and you can feel it. If it goes in, you're good. If not, then just hit the kind of tap on the side over here and tap it in. It won't affect the bearing near as bad. Okay. So you just go back and forth until you get them all down. And another thing when you're Plastigage, you don't want to turn the crank once you got them all on there, all the plastic on there. You don't want to move the crank. Okay. I think they're all good and down. Now, go ahead and get your torque wrench And you can go in steps. I'm gonna go ahead and go. I'm gonna go 100 on these, but I might just start off with like 70. Yeah, I'll probably go right there. Now, when torquing, since we're plastic gauging, you don't have to do this, but if it was a final torque, you do, because I don't want the crank to rotate. But when you torque on an engine stand, especially a one wheel in the front like that, I do have the wheel in the crack of the concrete. You know how the concrete comes with that factory, I forget what they call that. So it does kind of hold. But I see so many people torque and hold their hips and stuff like this and putting their feet all over these, or having a friend hold the front of the block and they're torquing their heads 105, 110 pounds, torquing the mains 100 pounds, 105 or whatever. You don't really want to do it like that. I've said this I don't know how many times, but if you were to turn the motor 90 degrees, just like this. Now, if you're building on a table, you don't have to do it. That's what's so cool about a table. So then I push it like this to where it's up against the bolt now. It's locked, and there's no effort. Okay, you can still put your foot here if you want, but it doesn't try to. It doesn't try to. Move. I mean, you can kind of see it going like this. But it's not trying to roll away whatsoever, okay? It's just a better deal. I mean, you can actually, you know, sit on this if you wanted to and just wait for your click. Because your block is already kind of hanging down now because it's on the stand. Okay, let me go ahead and, man, that's what I don't like about chrome. You can't really, I think I went 105. No biggie. But going that much, like I say, when you go down, it doesn't try to roll away. I do have my foot back there, but it's not trying to climb over my foot or anything. I've actually seen stands, people did so hard it actually kind of roll over their feet. Okay, let me back this off while I'm thinking about it. All right. I grant you it was in that crack, but that much pounds, it'd still try to, you know what I'm saying, you would have seen it still trying to move over and probably just roll out of that crack. So anyway, there you go. Okay, now we got that. Now we want to bust the cap back off to check the Plastigage. Now when I do it, I don't use a torque wrench. I go ahead and use a breaker bar or whatever you got to break them loose. I kind of do it, done it kind of evenly. You don't need a breaker bar to figure that out. You can figure how far you move your arm, how far I move my arm. That's kind of your elbow gauge. So, and I had my foot on there and it was pushing against the foot pretty good. Now when you take the cap off, You want to kind of take it off as best you can without. Once you get it up a little bit, you can rock it and it won't hurt the Plastigage. But see, you just got to kind of. Alright, I got you in the film or not. Just like that. Now you get your piece you cut. This guy here. What side am I on? Not that side. This side. And I don't know if it'll show, but if you look real close, it's 1, and I think it's 1.5 all the way to 3. And then you will. I'll move the camera over. I guess I should have done it first. Can't believe I'm even touching this stuff. So let's put this right here. Tilt it down. Is it in there? Might take me a second to. Yeah. Okay, you can see the Plastigage right there. And you can see it's smashed. So basically, you would just use these different, the white one and then the green one, then the whiter white one, then there's a whiter green one. And you're going to basically see which one it's closest to. Okay, like right there. And then I move it back a little bit. And then back a little bit. Back a little bit. See, and you just kind of see which one that it actually fits the best. And it's actually that green one right there, which is 2 thou. Is it in the camera? Okay, it's 2 thou. Now that you've seen that part, we'll check the cap. So we get to move that back up again. Move it back here again. Move it like that. Yeah, I'm kind of just not used to that landscape deal. It's kind of different. All right, now there it is on there. Of course, I didn't have it perfectly straight because it was sticking to my fingers and everything. Then you do the same thing. You're just trying to, well, where are you at? There you are. You're just trying to find one that fits it the best. And of course you're gonna do it, all the way down and stuff. So it's about 2 thou, okay, right there. If it's a little over, a little less, you just kind of tell yourself, okay, it's a little over, a little less. So that there was the whole deal on rear main seal and Plastigaging. Now, we're going to check the thrust. That was the last little request. Got to find something. Let me see if I got. You want to kind of remove the Plastigage. You can use your fingernails if you have, long fingernails or whatever. Mine, I usually they get a little bit long. Most mechanics, they like having fingernails. They use them a lot. I'm not. I usually try to cut mine all back down if they start to get. But anyway, I'm not a mechanic though, so that's why I cut mine down. So anyway, but I do have mechanic friends, and their fingernails are, they're not long, but they're out to a little ways because they do use them a lot for things. So once that's cleaned, you can lay this back on. Kind of clean it off with the cap too if you can. Let me just kind of scrape that a little bit. All right. So put the cap back on. Let's say we already checked them all. Now we're going to check the thrust. Put that back on. I don't know if the crank's even going to turn because actually I tore down both engines. This isn't the crank out of this block, and that's, I don't remember if those are the right bearings. They're the right bearings as far as the undersize, but I don't know if it's the one that came out of the block. I just grabbed the one that I can reach. In fact, this crank here is 3.5 inch stroke, but when it goes back in the build, it's going to be 3.700 because we're doing another 377. So I'll be offset grinding this crank to make it 3.700 will be the stroke. Okay, in play. Okay, here's how we're gonna do it. Let's see if I can set the camera up again. I guess this will be one of my longest videos in a while, huh? I don't like them real long, but okay, let's set that there first. Oh, I guess I better torque the cap. Let me torque that real fast. Didn't even torque it. Probably don't really need to torque full torque, but I guess you should though. Even though it's just the in play. And it's just so much easier to push than it is to pull, I think. I'm gonna go ahead and go all the way instead of going in step. I mean, I'm gonna go in steps, but I'm not gonna actually keep resetting it. It's gonna kind of go back and forth until I get. Just so much easier when you go down like that. You have more power and everything. You don't even feel exhausted. Okay. Now we'll do the inside. I was watching a video the other day, Terry Grover, and he was having problems replying to comments. Well, I'm having the same issue, the same thing. And I think there's other people having that same issue. When they go to reply, it pops up an error on the bottom of the phone, like in a white strip down there. It says something error, and then it's going through the same thing. It doesn't do it on every one of them. It just does it on certain ones. Okay, gonna check the infloat. The way I do it, or in play or thrust or whatever, I rotate the crank. I always turn clockwise because you should never roll a crank backwards. I know it's probably a myth, but I've always been that way. I know other guys are the same way. You should always go that. The only time you're gonna turn your crank backwards is like when you're degreening a cam, you'll turn it a little bit backwards. But if you know a lot of crank grinders and stuff, they'll even tell you should never turn a crank backwards in a block. So always make it a good habit, even though you're just doing little stuff like this, to still turn it, the direction that it's going. Okay, now I put my weight up here, okay? And then I get my thumbs and my cap here. I hold this cap and I push it all the way back with my thumbs. That's my first thing, as far as I can do it. Then you get your fancy tool here. Your dial indicator, magnetic base, Harbor Freight, whoever you get it from. Okay, and just basically, I put it right on the snout, like right, you can see where it's at. Some guys will put it on the bolt. I don't like using the bolt because your bolt can have loose threads or whatever. You know, could you have, there's a little gap in between the threads, or haven't you ever screwed a bolt in halfway and you can still wiggle it? I just don't like doing the bolt thing. I see it all the time done on the bolts. You can do it on a weight, you can do that. But I like to do it just right there because my hands are gonna be up here. See, now, basically what you're doing is zero it out. Okay, let's see. Okay, before I move the camera, what I'm gonna do to make the needle move, I'm gonna squeeze with just like this. Okay, I don't do that bar thing or a screwdriver thing. It's always freaks me out. I'm gonna break see the tip of a screwdriver break off or something. But I have done it in the past because guys, I've walked into places or helping guys out and they already had their bar out, they're already doing it. And then they'll ask me to fill it, and I'll do it, but it's not my preference. It's not what I want to do. And if you should be able to squeeze, and I mean, I'm an old guy, but you should be able to squeeze enough in play, okay? Even though you can go the same distance and then keep barring it with a bar, trying to get that extra, to me, it's not, it's really not worth it. Just do it like this. So now, let's see if I can move this over. Now that you know how I'm gonna move it, now let's see if, hopefully you can see that needle. It's on the zero right there. Okay. Yep, it's on the zero. I don't know if you can see that. Okay, now I'm gonna go ahead and squeeze this. Here I go. Oh, and hold on. Oh, my arm hit my bad. My arm hit the the magnet. I have never done that. So let's redo this. But it looked like it went about 5 1/4. Let's see. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna squeeze. Yeah, okay, I went to 5. I'm gonna push with my thumbs right to 0. Squeeze. Hard as I can, 5. I like to see 6, to be honest with you, but it is a hair over the 0. Let me just see if I can, there we go. Now it's dead on the 0. I don't know if you can see that or not. Let me squeeze. There we go, a little over the 5. Okay, and then back, you can hear it. Okay, it usually is loud like that if you don't have any kind of oils. Like if you had your thrust bearing lubed up and everything on the sides and stuff, you probably wouldn't hear it that loud. So that's basically all I'm doing is using my hands and fingers. And if I can get the number I want, there's no way my bar is gonna get 2 or 3 thousandths more. It just, you'd be bending stuff. So that's how that goes. I think I went too high, didn't I? Anyway, yeah, I did. I'm so used to that vertical or whatever they call the other one, portrait, something like that. So anyway, there's that. There it is, and that's how I check that. Now, if for some reason it was a little bit tight, like I want to clearance that a little bit, you can get like some flat, like some of these machines here got real flat table, or get a piece of sheet of glass, get you some emeries, certain different grits, and you can kind of do the figure 8 with your thrust bearing, okay? And I like to stick the bearing in the cap because it kind of helps you hold it flat, okay? I mean, you can do it if you don't try to rush it without the cap, okay? But if you leave it in, because you have to do both bearings. But a lot, on this engine, the both bearings will fit in the cap. Even though it's an upper, it'll fit in the lower, okay? So you can do it like that, maybe not on all engines, but you just want to try to keep it as flat as you can. Maybe if you know you got to take off, I shouldn't say a heavy amount, but if you got to take some off, you can use a little heavier grit and maybe just go on your figure 8. You can spray some WD if you want. Just kind of go like that, but always check it. You want to crawl to it, okay? You don't want to run right up to it. You want to sneak up on it, okay? So then you can go to a real fine one, then clean it really good. Clean, because it can get stuff in there, so you want to make sure you clean it really good. But that's, like I say, we don't do that a whole lot, because you get a variance of infloat what you want. So anyway, that is that. And so that video was a little longer than what I was intending it to be. I think I covered everything. So, cool. Yeah, I did the in-play, I did the rear main seal, the Plastigage, I set the camera sideways. And so if, I usually don't say stuff like this too much, but if you like this stuff, make sure you hit that like button, okay? I never really asked for subscribers or anything, but I guess it gives out notifications when I do videos, so if that's the way that works, you can always subscribe. And if I want to start showing more of the old school machines, and like I've said in the past, I want to show as much as I can. I got lots going on, it's just really hard. I'm just one guy, but I really got loaded up with a lot of stuff. So, again, I do have a lot of cool old machines that I use these machines for other than what they are intended for. I use them for what they're intended for, but you've also seen me do things that they're not intended for, okay? Especially the Winona. I polish crankshafts with the Winona. I drill for 4-bolt mains on the Winona. I dowel the main caps on the Winona. Polish camshafts. I drill broken bolts. Whatever it is, it's all done on the Winona. And you see me do odd stuff on the IDL. Same with the mill here. So I was thinking, maybe I start showing a lot of this cool stuff. So anyway, that's that. This is a very long video, wasn't it? Looks like it was almost it's about 48, it's gonna be like 49 minutes long. So, I think I covered everything. Okay, and as always, you guys be safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.